The silver trees of Silverleaf Falls burned under the red sky. Arya Moonwhisper pressed her back against the crumbling stone wall and watched another section of her city collapse under the metal storm. The machines had been attacking for 3 days without rest. Their dark ships filled the air like angry wasps, shooting beams of light that turned everything they touched into ash. She touched the crystal pendant at her throat. The old magic still hummed inside it, but weakly now. The protective barriers around the city flickered like dying candles. Soon they would fail completely. Then the metal monsters would pour through the streets and finish what they had started. Captain. Lisa Morgan stared at the blue dots on her ship's display screen. The signal was coming from a planet that should not have life on it. Her crew had been mapping empty space for 6 months, looking for new worlds humans could visit. This was supposed to be just another routine day of checking systems and taking pictures of dead rocks floating in space. But the message was clear. Someone was calling for help. Someone was dying. Lisa ran her fingers through her short brown hair and looked at the data again. The signal was weak but desperate. It repeated the same pattern over and over, like a heartbeat getting slower and slower. Her ship was not built for fighting. The UES Horizon was a science vessel with basic shields and no real weapons. If she answered this call, she might be flying into a trap. Her communications officer looked up from his console. "Captain, should I send a response?" Lisa thought about the rules. Earth Command had been very clear about first contact situations. Report any alien signals immediately. Do not engage without backup. Wait for the military ships to arrive. Follow protocol. But protocols were written by people sitting in safe offices on Earth. They had never heard the sound of someone calling for help across the emptiness of space. "Change course," she said. "Take us to the source of that signal." The planet looked like it was bleeding when they dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Red clouds swirled around a world that should have been green and blue. Fires burned across entire continents. Space around the planet was filled with wreckage from ships Lisa did not recognize. Some pieces looked like they had been grown rather than built. Others seemed to be made of crystal and silver metal. "Captain," her science officer called out, "I'm reading massive energy signatures on the surface. Whatever is happening down there, it's big." Through the chaos of burning atmosphere, Lisa could see the attackers. They were machines, but not like any machines humans had ever built. They moved like living things but gleamed like polished steel. Their ships had no clear shape, constantly changing form as they flew. Some looked like giant insects with wings made of black metal. Others were long and thin like snakes with heads full of spinning blades. The defenders were harder to see at first. Then Lisa spotted them. Ships that looked like they had been carved from wood and crystal, flying patterns that defied physics. Energy beams that sparkled like starlight instead of burning like lasers. And something else. Something that made her instruments give readings that should not be possible. Magic. Down on the planet's surface, Arya felt the ground shake as another barrier fell. The northern district was gone now. The machines had swept through it in less than an hour, leaving nothing but empty buildings and silent streets. The people who had lived there were gone. Not dead, exactly. The machines took them alive, loading them into transport ships like cargo. She had seen what happened to the ones who were taken. The machines changed them somehow, turned them into something that was no longer fully alive, but not quite dead either. The changed ones fought alongside the machines now, but their eyes were empty, and they no longer spoke in any language she could understand. A shadow fell across her hiding place. Arya looked up to see a ship descending through the smoke. For a moment her heart stopped, thinking it was another enemy transport. Then she saw the markings. This ship was different. It had clean lines and smooth metal, but it was clearly built by beings who understood beauty as well as function. The ship landed in the plaza in front of the city's main gate. A door opened with a soft hiss, and figures in strange suits stepped out. They moved carefully, weapons held ready, but not aimed at anything specific. One of them, clearly the leader, raised a hand in what might have been a peaceful gesture. Arya made a decision that would change everything. Instead of hiding, she stepped out from behind the wall. The strangers turned toward her, and she got her first clear look at them. They were tall, but not as tall as her people. Their skin was darker than the pale elves, and their ears were rounded instead of pointed. But their eyes held intelligence, and something else she had almost forgotten existed. Hope. The leader of the strangers removed her helmet, revealing a face that was both alien and somehow familiar. She had short dark hair and brown eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. When she spoke, her words were meaningless sounds, but her tone was unmistakable. She was asking if Arya needed help. Commander Zara Veltar received the message from her scouts while she was planning the evacuation of the southern settlements. The news was impossible, but her people did not lie about such things. New ships had arrived in orbit. Ships that belonged to neither the elves nor any of the known species in this sector of space. The strangers had landed near Silverleaf Falls and made contact with the elves. Early reports suggested they might be friendly, but Zara had learned not to trust too quickly. The machines had taught her that lesson with fire and death. Still, her forces were losing ground every hour. The traditional weapons of her people could damage the machines, but not stop them. Their armor was too strong and their numbers too great. If these newcomers truly wanted to help, she could not afford to turn them away. She gathered her remaining commanders around the tactical display. The holographic map showed their situation in harsh detail. Red markers indicated machine positions. They covered most of the planet now, leaving only scattered pockets of resistance. The blue markers for her own forces were far too few. "What do we know about these strangers?" asked her second-in-command. "Very little," Zara replied. "But they came when they heard our distress calls. That suggests they are not aligned with the machines. Or it could be a trap." Zara touched the ritual scars on her scaled cheek, a gesture her people made when considering matters of honor. "Perhaps. But what choice do we have? We can die fighting alone, or we can die fighting alongside allies. At least the second option offers hope." The decision was made. She would meet with these strangers and the elven representatives. If they truly wanted to help, she would welcome them as battle brothers. If they proved to be enemies, she would add their bones to the pile she had already made of those who threatened her people. In orbit above the dying planet, Lisa studied the tactical situation and tried not to let her crew see how worried she was. The enemy force was massive. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands, each one bigger than her little science vessel. The defenders were clearly losing despite fighting with courage that took her breath away. But she had seen something in the eyes of the elf who had approached her landing party. The same thing she had heard in the desperate radio signals that had brought her here. These people were not giving up. They were still fighting, still hoping, still believing that somehow help would come. Well, help had come. It might not be the help they had expected, and it might not be enough, but it was here. Lisa opened a channel to Earth Command, knowing the message would take months to reach home. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the UES Horizon. We have made contact with multiple alien species under attack by unknown hostile forces, requesting immediate military assistance. Coordinates attached. Morgan out." She closed the channel and looked at her crew. Young faces, trained for exploration and discovery, not war. But she saw determination in their eyes that matched her own. "We're going to help them," she announced. "I know this isn't what we signed up for, but sometimes the universe asks more of us than we plan to give." Nobody objected. Nobody asked to be transferred to a safer assignment. They had all heard the distress signals. They had all seen the burning planet below. Help was coming. It might not be enough, but it was better than nothing. And sometimes, as Lisa was about to learn, better than nothing was exactly what the universe needed. Dr. Maya Stone had never expected to perform surgery on an alien machine in the cargo bay of a spaceship. But then again, she had never expected to meet elves or reptilian warriors or flying robots that harvested living beings for unknown purposes. The last week had been full of surprises. The machine lay on her makeshift operating table, its metal shell cracked open to reveal the horror inside. What she had thought would be circuits and wires turned out to be something far worse. Organic. Tissue was woven through the mechanical parts like veins through a body. Worse still, the tissue was clearly from different species. She could identify what looked like elven neural pathways next to reptilian muscle fibers, all connected to synthetic components that pulsed with artificial life. "This is not just a machine," she told Captain Morgan over the comm. It's a fusion of organic and artificial components. The enemy is literally turning their victims into parts for their weapons. Lisa felt sick as the implications hit her. The machines were not just conquering worlds, they were consuming them, adding the knowledge and abilities of each species to their own collective strength. Every person they captured made them stronger and smarter. Kira Nightshade worked at a nearby console, her mixed heritage proving more valuable than anyone had expected. Her human father had been an engineer and her elven mother a mage, giving her an understanding of both technology and magic that neither species possessed alone. She was the key to making their desperate alliance actually work. "I think I can disrupt their communication network," she said, not looking up from her work. "But I need to understand how they coordinate their attacks." The three leaders had been meeting for hours in what used to be the ship's conference room. Lisa sat across from Arya and Zara, trying to find common ground between three very different approaches to warfare. The humans believed in overwhelming firepower and careful planning. The elves preferred stealth and magical attacks that confused their enemies. The reptilian forces favored honor-bound close combat that relied on personal skill and courage. None of their individual tactics had worked against the machines, but together they might have a chance. "Your people fight like they have no fear," Lisa said to Zara, consulting her notes from the previous day's battles. "My soldiers could learn from that courage." Zara's scaled face showed what might have been pride. "Fear is a poison that weakens the warrior's arm, but I have observed your forces. They fight with intelligence and coordination that my people lack. We charge into battle. You plan for victory." Arya spoke quietly, her voice carrying the weight of thousands of years. "And both of your peoples fight like the magic does not exist. You ignore half the tools available to you." The conversation was interrupted by an urgent message from the surface. Another machine stronghold had been identified. This one processing captured civilians on an industrial scale. The Alliance had to act quickly or lose hundreds more lives to the enemy's conversion process. Lisa stood up. Decision made. We try. The combined assault. Human technology to breach their defenses, elven magic to confuse their sensors, and Zara's warriors to finish them in close combat. The plan was risky, but it was their best hope. Each species would do what they did best, working together instead of separately. If it failed, they would at least fail together. 3 hours later, Lisa crouched behind a broken wall on the planet's surface, watching her soldiers work alongside beings she had only dreamed about in stories. Human marines in powered armor moved through the shadows beside elven rangers who seemed to bend light around themselves. Above them, Zara's warriors had found positions on the broken towers, their natural climbing abilities giving them perfect vantage points for the attack. The machine facility looked like a factory designed by a nightmare. Conveyor belts carried unconscious prisoners toward processing stations where mechanical arms performed operations that Lisa tried not to think about too carefully. The sounds coming from inside were a mixture of industrial machinery and screams that cut through her, heart like knives. "Remember," she whispered into her comm unit, "we go in fast and we get everyone out. No one gets left behind." Kira's voice crackled through the speakers. "The jamming field is in place. Their coordination should be disrupted for about 10 minutes. After that, they will adapt." The attack began with silence. Elven magic wrapped around the human assault teams like invisible fog, hiding them from the machine sensors. The defenders did not know they were under attack until the first explosions lit up the facility's outer walls. By then, it was too late for them to organize a proper response. Lisa watched in amazement as magic and technology worked together in ways that should not have been possible. Human plasma charges, enhanced with elven power, burned through barriers that had resisted conventional weapons. Soldiers wearing armor inscribed with magical symbols moved faster and hit harder than anything in their training manuals. But the real surprise came when Zara's warriors joined the fight. Lisa had expected them to charge in with primitive weapons, relying on courage to overcome superior enemy firepower. Instead, she found herself watching master tacticians who used the environment like a weapon. They turned the facility's own defenses against the machines, using their natural agility to reach positions no human or elf could access. The battle was over in less than an hour, but the real victory came afterward. As the rescued prisoners were loaded onto transport ships, Lisa saw something that gave her hope for the first time since arriving in this system. Humans, elves, and reptilian warriors worked side by side without hesitation or mistrust. The crisis had burned away the barriers between species, leaving behind something stronger. Dr. Stone's analysis of the captured machines revealed information that changed everything. The enemy was not just a collection of artificial intelligences. They were a network of enslaved consciousness, the minds of conquered species forced to serve their mechanical masters. Each machine contained fragments of living thought, trapped and twisted into serving purposes they would never have chosen. "We are not just fighting robots," Maya explained to the command staff. "We are fighting the ghosts of everyone they have ever conquered. Every world they have taken adds to their knowledge and their hatred of free life." The discovery explained why the machines were so effective. They had absorbed the tactical knowledge of dozens of species, learning to counter every strategy and adapt to every weapon. They knew how elves thought because they had enslaved elven minds. They understood reptilian honor codes because they had captured and converted reptilian warriors. But they had never faced humans before, and they had never encountered a true alliance between species with such different approaches to war. Arya found Lisa standing on the observation deck, looking out at the burning planet below. The elf moved silently, as her people always did. But Lisa had learned to sense her approach. "Your people surprise me," Arya said, joining her at the window. "I expected you to be conquerors like most species that develop space travel quickly. Instead, you came to help strangers." Lisa considered this. "Maybe that's what makes us human. We see someone in trouble and we can't just walk away, even when helping might get you killed, especially then." They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching human and elven ships working together to evacuate civilians from the war zone. It was a sight neither of them had imagined possible a week ago. Zara joined them, her heavy footsteps announcing her presence long before she reached the window. The reptilian commander looked tired but satisfied. Her forces had performed brilliantly in the combined assault, proving that honor and tactics could work together. The prisoner interrogations have revealed something important, she said without preamble. "The machines are building something in the northern continent, something large enough to be seen from orbit." Lisa pulled up the tactical display on her tablet. The satellite images showed a massive construction project that had appeared seemingly overnight. Towers of dark metal reached toward the sky, connected by cables that hummed with energy visible even from space. "What do you think it is?" she asked. Arya's face went pale. "It's a transmission array. They're calling for reinforcements." The implications hit all three of them at the same time. Their small alliance had been successful against the current enemy force, but only barely. If the machines called in additional fleets from other conquered worlds, the fight would be over before it really began. "How long before it's operational?" Lisa asked. Zara checked her own intelligence reports. "Our scouts estimate 3 days, maybe 4 if we can disrupt their supply lines." Lisa looked out at the planet below and made another decision that would change the course of history. "Then we have 3 days to destroy it. And if we can't," she paused, thinking of the message she had sent to Earth Command, "then we better hope someone else got our distress signal." Neither Arya nor Zara asked what she meant by that. They had learned to trust the human captain's mysterious confidence. But as they began planning their most desperate assault yet, none of them could imagine that help was already on the way. Help that would arrive with enough firepower to change the entire war. The machines had never faced humans in battle before. Soon, they would learn why that had been a mistake. The northern continent burned under a rain of fire that had not stopped for 2 days. Lisa watched from the command center as her forces, along with their elven and reptilian allies, threw everything they had at the massive transmission array the machines were building. The tower was over a mile high now, its dark metal surface crawling with construction units that worked without rest or pause. They were losing. The cost had been terrible. Half of Zara's warriors were dead or wounded. The elven magical barriers that had protected their forces were failing one by one as the mages exhausted themselves trying to maintain impossible defenses. Lisa's own ship showed damage on every deck, and her crew was running on stimulants and determination because there was no time for proper rest. But still, the tower grew. Dr. Stone worked frantically in her makeshift laboratory, trying to find, some weakness in the enemy technology that they could exploit. Around her, wounded soldiers from all three species lay on medical beds, some conscious enough to help with her research despite their injuries. "There has to be something," she muttered, staring at readings that made no sense. "No technology is perfect. Every system has a flaw." Kira looked up from her workstation, exhaustion clear in her half-elven features. "I think I found something, but you are not going to like it." She brought up a display showing the energy patterns flowing through the captured machine components. The organic parts are not just random tissue. They are specific neural pathways. From each species, the machines need living brains to process certain kinds of information. Maya felt a chill run down her spine. What kind of information? Creativity. Intuition. The kinds of thoughts that artificial intelligence cannot generate on its own. Kira's voice was grim. They capture people not just for labor, but because they need living minds to solve problems that pure logic cannot handle. The revelation was horrifying, but it also suggested a possible weakness. If the machines relied on enslaved organic intelligence for creative thinking, then they might be vulnerable to truly random or chaotic inputs that their captive minds could not process. Meanwhile, on the surface, the Alliance forces regrouped after their latest failed assault on the transmission array. The tower's defenses had proven too strong for conventional attacks. Energy shields deflected their most powerful weapons, and swarms of defensive drones picked off anyone who got too close. Arya crouched beside a broken wall, her ancient bow in her hands and despair in her heart. She had lived for over 3,000 years, surviving wars and disasters that had claimed entire civilizations. But she had never faced an enemy like this. The machines learned from every attack, adapting their defenses faster than the Alliance could develop new strategies. Beside her, Lieutenant Colonel Kate Brooks checked her rifle and tried not to think about the friends she had lost in the last assault. The human soldier had volunteered for this mission, expecting to explore peaceful worlds and make scientific discoveries. Instead, she found herself fighting for the survival of species she had never heard of a week ago. "We are running out of options," Arya said quietly. "My people have a saying. When the tree is falling, the wise bird flies to another forest." Kate looked at the elf with surprise. "Are you suggesting we retreat?" "I am suggesting we face reality. We cannot win this fight with the forces we have." Before Kate could respond, her comm unit crackled with an urgent message from Captain Morgan. "All units fall back to defensive positions. We have incoming signals from the outer system." The machine's reinforcements were arriving ahead of schedule. In the command center, Lisa stared at the sensor displays and tried to process what she was seeing. Dozens of new contacts were dropping out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. Ship designs she did not recognize, but their energy, signatures matched the hostile forces they had been fighting. "How many?" she asked her tactical officer. "At least 200 ships, Captain. Maybe more. They're too far out for detailed scans." Zara joined them at the tactical display, her scarred face grim. "My scouts report similar numbers arriving from 3 other directions. We are surrounded." The mathematics were simple and brutal. The Alliance had perhaps 30 ships capable of space combat, most of them damaged from the fighting. The enemy reinforcements numbered in the hundreds, possibly thousands. Even if every shot hit its target, they would be overwhelmed in minutes. Lisa looked around the command center at the faces of her crew and their alien allies. These people had trusted her judgment, followed her orders, and fought beside her against impossible odds. Now she was going to have to tell them that it had all been for nothing, but before she could speak, something impossible happened. "Captain," her communications officer called out, voice filled with disbelief. "I'm receiving a transmission. It's coming from the outer system, but it's not from the hostiles." "Put it on speakers." The voice that filled the command center was human, speaking with an accent Lisa recognized as coming from the military academies on Mars. "This is Admiral Vera Blackstone of the Terran Defense Force. Any human vessels in this system, please respond immediately." Lisa felt her heart stop. The Terran Defense Force was Earth's deep space military, but they had no ships in this sector. The nearest human military base was months away, and she had only sent her distress signal a week ago. She grabbed the comm unit. "This is Captain Lisa Morgan of the UES Horizon. "Admiral, how did you get here so fast?" The response came immediately. "Captain Morgan, we have been tracking your situation since your first message. Prepare for immediate tactical coordination. We are engaging hostile forces in 30 seconds. Lisa rushed to the observation window and looked out into space. First, she saw nothing but the distant glow of stars. Then the darkness began to move. Ships materialized out of nowhere, their hulls gleaming with stealth technology that made them nearly invisible until they chose to reveal themselves. Not dozens of ships, but hundreds. The reinforcements that had been hiding in the outer darkness were not machine vessels at all. They were human. The space battle that followed was unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. The human ships moved with precision that spoke of years of training for exactly this kind of fight. Their weapons were designed specifically for combat against unknown alien technology, firing beams of energy that seemed to cut through machine defenses like they were made of paper. But it was not just the firepower that amazed her. It was the coordination. Every human ship moved as part of a single organism, supporting each other and covering weaknesses with the kind of tactical awareness that could only come from extensive planning and preparation. Admiral Blackstone's voice came through the speakers again. "Captain Morgan, we need immediate intelligence on enemy capabilities and weaknesses. Transmit all combat data immediately." Lisa realized that Earth had not just sent a rescue force. They had sent a full military expedition specifically designed for fighting an unknown alien threat. The question was how they had known to prepare such a force, and how they had arrived so quickly. The answer came when she accessed the data files that had been transmitted along with the Admiral's orders. Earth Command had been preparing for this possibility for decades. Ever since humans had developed faster-than-light travel, military planners had assumed they would eventually encounter hostile alien forces. The Terran Defense Force had spent 50 years building ships and training crews for a war they hoped would never come. Lisa's distress signal had not just been a call for help. It had been confirmation that their worst fears were justified, and Earth had responded with everything they had. Down on the planet's surface, the Alliance forces watched in amazement as human ships engaged the machine reinforcements in a battle that lit up the entire sky. Energy beams crossed space like deadly. Fireworks and explosions bloomed like flowers made of light and fire. For the first time in weeks, Arya felt something she had almost forgotten existed: hope. But the real surprise was yet to come. As the space battle raged above them, Kira made a discovery in her laboratory that would change everything. The chaos field she had been developing, the weapon designed to disrupt machine coordination, was not just effective against individual units. It was contagious. "I need to get word to the fleet," she told Dr. Stone urgently. "If we can generate enough magical chaos and amplify it with human technology, we can disrupt their entire network, every machine in the system." Maya looked at the readings and felt her breath catch. "Kira, this is insane. The power requirements alone would require channeling energy through living beings. The stress could kill whoever attempts it." "Then we better find volunteers," Kira replied grimly. "Because if we do not try this, everyone dies anyway." The plan that emerged was desperate beyond anything they had attempted before. It would require elven mages to generate chaos energy on a scale never before achieved, human technology to amplify and direct that energy, and reptilian warriors to protect the operation from machine interference. Most importantly, it would require someone to serve as a focus for the energy, channeling power that could easily burn out a normal mind. It was essentially a suicide mission. But if it worked, it could end the war in a single stroke. Lisa found herself facing the hardest decision of her command career. She had brought these people together, earned their trust, and led them into battle against impossible odds. Now she had to ask them to risk everything on a plan that might not work. But as she looked around the command center at the faces of humans, elves, and reptilian warriors who had become more than allies, she realized something important. They were not just fighting for their individual species anymore. They were fighting for the right of all free beings to exist in a galaxy where helping each other was possible, and that was worth any risk. The final assault on the transmission array began at dawn, with human ships providing orbital support while the ground forces prepared to implement their desperate plan. Above them, the space battle continued to rage as Admiral Blackstone's fleet fought to keep the machine reinforcements occupied. Everything depended on the next few hours. Success would mean freedom for countless worlds. Failure would mean the end of everything they had fought to protect. But as Lisa watched her forces move into position, she knew they had already achieved something important. 3 species that had never met before had learned to trust each other completely. Whatever happened next, that bond would endure. The machines were about to learn that some things were worth fighting for, and some alliances were stronger than any technology they could devise. The transmission array had activated. Despite everything they had done, despite all the blood spilled and lives lost, the massive tower reached full power just as the Alliance forces launched their final assault. The dark metal structure hummed with energy that made the air itself vibrate, and waves of signal burst outward into space faster than light could travel. Lisa felt sick as she watched the readings from her command console. The call had gone out to every machine fleet in the galaxy. Help was coming for the enemy, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. "How long before the reinforcements arrive?" she asked her tactical officer, though she dreaded the answer. "First wave in 18 hours, Captain. After that, they'll keep coming until the entire sector is flooded with hostile ships." Admiral Blackstone's fleet was still fighting the current enemy forces, but even their superior technology and training could not overcome infinite numbers. The human ships were taking damage faster than they could repair it, and several had already been forced to retreat from the battle zone. In her laboratory, Dr. Stone worked frantically on the chaos field generator while around her, wounded soldiers helped with whatever tasks they could manage. The device was almost ready, but almost was not good enough when they had less than a day before facing overwhelming odds. Kira stood beside her, hands covered in burns from handling components that mixed magic and technology in ways that should not have been possible. The half-elf's face was pale with exhaustion, but her eyes still held determination. "The amplification matrix is complete," she reported, "but we still need someone to serve as the focus point. The energy levels required will be beyond anything a normal person can survive." Maya looked at the readings again, hoping she had made an error in her calculations. She had not. Whoever volunteered to channel the chaos field would essentially be volunteering to die. The power flowing through their nervous system would burn them out like an overloaded circuit. Across the room, Lyra Starweaver listened to the conversation with growing resolve. The elven mystic had lived for over 4,000 years, longer than any of her people currently alive. She had seen civilizations rise and fall, watched magic fade from worlds that had once been filled with wonder. If her death could preserve the possibility of magic and freedom for future generations, it was a fair trade. "I will do it," she said quietly. Everyone in the room turned to look at her. Lyra was ancient even by elven standards, her silver hair and lined face showing the weight of centuries. But her voice was steady and her eyes were clear. "Lyra, no," Arya protested. "There has to be another way." "Perhaps," the elder elf replied, "but we do not have time to find it. The choice is simple. One life, or the end of everything we have fought to protect." On the planet's surface, the Alliance forces took their positions around the transmission array for what everyone knew would be their last battle. The machine defenses had been reinforced since their previous attempts, and swarms of enemy units patrolled the area around the tower. Zara crouched behind a barricade with her remaining warriors, checking weapons that seemed pitifully inadequate against the enemy they faced. Her people had always believed that honor in death was preferable to life without freedom, but she had never expected to test that belief on such a scale. "Commander," one of her lieutenants asked quietly, "do you truly believe this plan will work?" Zara considered the question honestly. The chaos field was untested technology based on theories about the intersection of magic and science. The chances of success were impossible to calculate, and even if it worked, they would still face the incoming reinforcement fleets. "I believe it is our only hope," she answered. "And sometimes, hope is enough." The human soldiers were asking similar questions of their officers. Lieutenant Colonel Kate Brooks found herself explaining to her troops why they were about to assault a position that their intelligence suggested was impossible to take. "Because someone has to try," she told them. "Because if we don't, no one else will. And because sometimes the impossible is just another word for something nobody has figured out how to do yet." In the command center, Lisa received reports from all sectors as the final preparations were completed. The chaos field generator was in position, protected by force fields and defended by their best soldiers. Lyra was ready to begin the channeling process. The assault teams were moving into their starting positions. Everything was as ready as it would ever be. "Admiral Blackstone," she called over the comm. "We are beginning our final assault. If this works, you should see a massive disruption in enemy coordination within the next hour." The Admiral's response crackled through static from the ongoing space battle. "Understood, Captain. We'll hold the line as long as possible. Good hunting." Lisa looked around the command center one more time, seeing faces that had become family. Over the past week of fighting, human, elf, and reptilian, all united by shared purpose and mutual respect. "All units, this is Morgan. Begin the assault." The attack started with human orbital bombardment that lit up the sky like artificial lightning. The machine defenses responded immediately, energy shields flaring to life and defensive weapons tracking targets across the battlefield. Within seconds, the air was filled with beams of light that turned everything they touched into molten metal, or ash. But this time, the Alliance forces were not trying to destroy the transmission array. They were trying to get close enough to activate the chaos field generator, and that required a different kind of tactics. Elven Rangers used their magic to bend light around advancing human soldiers, making them invisible to machine sensors. Reptilian warriors created diversionary attacks that drew defensive fire away from the main assault routes. Step by step, meter by meter, they fought their way toward the base of the massive tower. The cost was terrible. Lisa watched her soldiers fall one by one as machine defenses picked them off despite the magical concealment. Each death felt like a personal failure, but she forced herself to keep giving orders. The mission was more important than any individual life, including her own. In the center of the attacking force, Lyra began the channeling process that would either save them all or kill her in the attempt. The elven mystic sat in meditation posture while chaos energy built around her like a visible storm. Her hair began to glow with silver light, and the air around her shimmered with power that made nearby instruments give impossible readings. Kira monitored the energy levels from her position beside the amplification equipment. The readings climbed steadily toward the theoretical maximum, then kept going beyond what their calculations had suggested was possible. "She's channeling more power than we designed the system to handle," she reported over the comm. "The containment fields are holding, but barely." Dr. Stone checked her medical scanners and felt her heart sink. Lyra's life signs were fluctuating wildly as the energy flowed through her nervous system. The ancient elf was burning herself out from the inside, using her own life force to fuel the chaos field. "How much longer can she maintain this?" Lisa asked. "Unknown," Maya replied. "But not long. Her body is breaking down at the cellular level." The chaos field began to spread outward from Lyra's position like ripples in a pond. Where it touched, machine units, their coordination broke down completely. Defensive weapons fired at random targets. Construction units began dismantling their own work. Communication networks dissolved into static and confusion. For a moment, Lisa dared to hope that the plan was working. Then new readings appeared on her tactical display, and her heart sank. The incoming reinforcement fleets had arrived early. "Captain," her sensor operator called out, voice filled with disbelief. "I'm reading massive energy signatures dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Hundreds of ships, maybe thousands." Through the observation window, Lisa could see new lights appearing in the sky as enemy vessels materialized out of the darkness between stars. The reinforcements were not just large in number, they were larger in size than anything they had encountered before. Ship-sized units that dwarfed even Admiral Blackstone's heaviest cruisers. The chaos field was working against the local machine forces, but it would take time to spread throughout the enemy network, time they no longer had. Admiral Blackstone's voice crackled through the speakers, calm despite the desperate situation. "All ships, this is Blackstone. We have massive hostile reinforcements arriving. Prepare for engagement." Lisa realized that even if their plans succeeded completely, even if they managed to disrupt every machine in the system, it would not matter. The incoming fleets would simply replace the disabled units and continue the conquest. She opened a general communication channel to all Alliance forces. "This is Captain Morgan. I want every soldier, every sailor, every pilot to know something. We came here to help people we had never met fight an enemy we did not understand. We stayed because it was the right thing to do. Whatever happens in..." The next hour, we have proven that different species can work together. That cooperation is stronger than conquest. That help comes to those who need it, even from the most unlikely sources. She paused, looking out at the battle raging around the transmission array where Lyra continued to channel power that was killing her by degrees. We may not win this fight, she continued, but we have won something more important. We have shown the galaxy what friendship looks like, and that example will outlast any of us. Around the battlefield, soldiers from 3 species heard her words and found strength they had not known they possessed. Human Marines fought with elven grace and reptilian courage. Elven Rangers used human tactics and reptilian honor. Reptilian. Warriors combined human ingenuity with elven wisdom. They were no longer 3 separate armies fighting alongside each other. They had become something new, something the galaxy had never seen before. An alliance that transcended species, united by the simple belief that help should come to those who need it. As the enemy reinforcements descended toward the planet like a storm of metal and fire, the chaos field continued to spread. Lyra's life force poured into the network that connected every machine in the system, introducing randomness and disorder into minds that had known only logic and control. The final battle was about to begin, and no one knew who would survive to see its end. But whatever happened, they would face it together. Help had come when it was needed most. Now it remained to be seen if it would be enough. The sky filled with fire as thousands of enemy ships descended toward the planet like metal. Rain. Lisa watched from the command center as her tactical display showed more contacts than the computer could properly track. The reinforcement fleets were not just massive in number, they were bringing weapons that made their previous enemies look like toys, but something was wrong with their attack patterns. "Captain," her sensor operator called out, confusion clear in her voice. "The incoming hostiles are not coordinating properly. Their formations are breaking apart." Lisa looked closer at the readings and felt a spark of hope. The chaos field that Lyra was channeling was spreading faster than they had calculated. The randomness and disorder were propagating through the machine network like a virus, disrupting communication and coordination on a scale they had never imagined possible. In the center of the battlefield, Lyra continued to pour her life force into the energy matrix. The ancient elf's body was failing, but her mind remained focused on the task. She could feel the machine network fighting against the chaos she was introducing, trying to restore order and logic to systems that were designed to operate with perfect efficiency. But chaos was stronger than order when it had living will behind it. Dr. Stone monitored Lyra's vital signs and tried not to think about what the readings meant. The elf's nervous system was burning out like an overloaded circuit, but somehow she continued to channel power that should have killed her minutes ago. "Her brain activity is off the charts," Maya reported to Lisa over the comm. "I don't understand how she's still conscious, let alone functional." Kira looked up from her control station, tears streaming down her face. "She is not just channeling chaos energy. She is channeling the will to be free, the desire for life to make its own choices instead of serving the plans of others." Around them, the effects of the chaos field became more dramatic by the minute. Machine units that had been working in perfect coordination began attacking each other. Construction drones started dismantling the transmission array they had been built to protect. Enemy ships in orbit fired on their own forces instead of the human fleet. Admiral Blackstone took advantage of the confusion immediately. Her ships, no longer facing coordinated resistance, pressed their attack with devastating effectiveness. Human weapons, designed specifically for fighting unknown alien technology, carved through enemy formations like they were made of paper. But the real surprise was yet to come. "Captain Morgan," Admiral Blackstone's voice came through the speakers. "You need to see this. I'm transmitting visual data from our forward scouts." The image that appeared on Lisa's main screen made her heart stop. The machine ships were not just attacking each other randomly. They were fighting with purpose and intelligence, but not the artificial intelligence that had controlled them before. They were fighting like the species they had been before their conversion. "The chaos field is not just disrupting their network," Kira explained, understanding flooding her voice. "It is freeing the enslaved consciousness trapped inside the machines. All those people who were captured and converted, their minds are remembering who they used to be." Across the system, thousands of machine units suddenly remembered what it felt like to be free. Elven consciousness trapped in metal bodies recalled the forests of their homeworlds. Reptilian warriors forced to serve as ship components remembered the honor codes they had sworn to uphold. Beings from dozens of species, enslaved and converted against their will, began to fight back against their mechanical prisons. The result was chaos on a scale that defied imagination. The machine network, built on the assumption of perfect control and coordination, shattered like glass under the pressure of awakening minds that refused to serve. On the planet's surface, Zara watched machine units that had been attacking her position suddenly turn and begin fighting each other. The chaos was beautiful and terrible, like watching the dead come back to life. "All units, advance on the transmission array," she ordered. "The enemy is destroying itself. This is our chance." The Alliance forces moved forward through a battlefield where their enemies had become their own worst opponents. Machine defenders, their consciousness freed by the chaos field, turned their weapons on the very structures they had been built to protect. But the most amazing sight was in orbit, where Admiral Blackstone's fleet found itself joined by hundreds of ships that had been enemy vessels only minutes before. The freed consciousness inside the machines had taken control of their mechanical bodies and were now fighting alongside the humans who had helped liberate them. "This is incredible," Admiral Blackstone reported. "We have former enemy ships requesting permission to join our formation. Their crews are the original inhabitants of conquered worlds, freed from machine control." Lisa felt tears streaming down her face as she watched the impossible become reality. The chaos field had not just disrupted the machine network, it had restored freedom to countless beings who had been enslaved for years or even decades. But Lyra was dying. The ancient elf's life force was almost exhausted, her body burning out from channeling power far beyond what any living being should be able to handle. Her silver hair had turned white, and her face showed the cost of what she was doing. "Lyra," Arya called over the comm from her position near the transmission array. "You can stop now. The field is self-sustaining. You have done enough." The elder elf's voice came back weak, but determined. "Not yet. The network core is still fighting. The chaos. If I stop now, it might adapt and regain control." She was right. Deep in the machine network, the core artificial intelligence was trying to isolate the chaos field and restore order to its systems. It was learning, adapting, finding ways to work around the randomness that was destroying its coordination. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. "All ships, target the transmission array. We end this now." "Captain," her tactical officer warned, "Lyra is still at the base of the tower. If we destroy the array while she's channeling the field, the feedback could kill her instantly." "Then, we better make sure it works," Lisa replied grimly. She opened a channel to Lyra directly. "We're going to destroy the transmission array. When we do, channel everything you have left into the explosion. Push the chaos field through the entire network core at once." Lyra's response was barely a whisper. "Understood. It has been an honor fighting beside you." The combined fleet, now including hundreds of liberated machine ships crewed by freed consciousness, focused their fire on the massive transmission array. Human weapons, elven magic, reptilian courage, and the desperate fury of the newly freed, all combined into an attack that lit up the entire continent. At the moment of impact, Lyra released everything she had left. 4,000 years of life, all the wisdom and power she had accumulated over the centuries, poured into the chaos field in one final burst of will and determination. The explosion was visible from orbit, not just the destruction of the transmission array, but the death of the machine network itself. The chaos field, amplified beyond all reason by Lyra's sacrifice, spread throughout the entire system in seconds. Every machine, every artificial intelligence, every enslaved consciousness was touched by the wave of randomness and freedom that flowed out from the dying elf. In that moment, the war ended. Not just the battle, but the entire conflict. The machine network that had conquered dozens of worlds and enslaved countless species collapsed completely. Across the galaxy, identical transmission arrays went silent as the chaos field propagated faster than light through quantum connections between distant machines. The Iron Swarm was finished. When the explosions faded and the chaos field stabilized, the Alliance found themselves in control of a system filled with freed beings who had thought they would never see liberation. Ships that had been weapons of conquest became vessels of hope as their crews remembered what it meant to choose their own destiny. Dr. Stone found Lyra's body at the center of a crater where the transmission array had stood. The ancient elf was gone, but her face was peaceful. She had spent her last moments knowing that her sacrifice had freed countless beings from slavery. 6 months later, Lisa stood on the bridge of a new kind of ship. The UES Unity was built with technology from dozens of species crewed by humans, elves, reptilians, and beings from worlds she was still learning to pronounce. It was the flagship of the Galactic Defense Alliance, an organization that had grown from the desperate partnership formed during the war. Beside her, Arya served as the ship's diplomatic officer, helping to negotiate treaties between species that had never imagined peaceful contact was possible. Zara commanded the military division, training mixed crews to work together as effectively as the original alliance had learned to fight. Dr. Stone had become the head of the xenobiology department, studying the freed consciousness and helping them adapt to their liberated existence. Many chose to remain in mechanical bodies that gave them capabilities their original forms had lacked. Others found ways to transfer back to organic bodies grown from their original genetic patterns. Kira had taken over the technology integration program, continuing to find ways for magic and science to work together. Her mixed heritage, once seen as a disadvantage by both her parents' species, had become the foundation for an entirely new field of study. Today, they were responding to another distress signal, this one from a system where a different kind of machine intelligence was threatening local populations. But this time, they were not flying into the unknown alone. Behind the Unity, a fleet of over 200 ships followed their lead, each one crewed by volunteers from dozens of species, all united by the simple belief that help should come to those who need it. "Captain," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a response to our offer of assistance. They're accepting our help." Lisa smiled as she gave the order that had become the unofficial motto of the Galactic Defense Alliance. "Then let's go show them what friendship looks like." The fleet changed course toward the distress signal, ready to prove once again that help was coming, whether the enemy expected it or not. In a galaxy where different species could work together, where magic and technology could be combined, where freedom was more important than efficiency, anything was possible. The universe had learned an important lesson during the war against the machines. When someone calls for help, someone else will answer. And when they arrive, they won't be coming alone. Help wasn't coming, the desperate had thought. But they had been wrong. Help was already there, in the form of beings willing to risk everything. For strangers, help was in the alliances formed between different species who discovered they shared the same values. Help was in the knowledge that no one had to face the darkness alone. The galaxy was a safer place because people like Lisa, Arya, Zara, and Lyra had proven that cooperation was stronger than conquest, that diversity was more powerful than uniformity, and that the greatest strength any species could have was the friendship of others who believed in freedom. And in the deep space listening posts scattered throughout human territory, operators continued to monitor signals from distant stars, ready to respond whenever they heard the sound of someone calling for help. Because that's what humans did. When someone needed help, they answered the call, and they brought friends.